Hello, brothers and sisters. Time to get started. This is going to be interesting. I'm not going to jump into what I wanted to show until see if there's a few more people in here. But I just came across this just a little bit ago. I was looking through, double checking, seeing if maybe there was anything new online that I hadn't noticed. And in the past, I haven't really gone through many of the articles about their culture and what they do there, because I was more into their beliefs, their teachings. But I decided to start looking at some of those a little bit more closely, and I came across one that was in unexpected place, although I guess in one sense it wasn't too unexpected. So we'll see. It's interesting not just because of where this article is, but what it says in a couple places of this. So I'm not going to read through all of it, but we're going to go through a little bit of it. So let me see if I can bring it up. Here we go. Interesting name for a website that's going to bring this up, isn't it? So I saw this, and I was kind of taken aback, and yet not all that surprised. I've mentioned this before. I've seen a bit of a connection. I've seen some hints of the New Age and things like that in what they say and what they teach, but not too plainly, not too straightforward. When I saw this, I had to read it. So let me see. I'm not going to go through all of it, because the start of this, they're talking about themselves a bit, and then they're talking about some stuff that doesn't really matter. I'm going to start right here, because this is when it really gets into Homestead, what they are, and some things that are interesting I'll talk about. So starting there, the community began in 1973 as a small inner city mission in New York City, whose members wanted to be more connected to their neighbors and to nature. They found property, first in Colorado, then finally in Texas in 1990. They bought 510 acres near Waco and dubbed their new farm Brazos de Dios, Arms of God, which was the original formal name of the adjacent Bezos River. They built homes and barns. They built a church, planted crops, and raised livestock. Really simplifying it. Not going into any of what was going on under the surface of this. They're just giving you the surface story there. But then this is what I found got interesting. Blair Adams, one of the community's founders, has written a lengthy examination of its traditions and beliefs in his book, What We Believe. It runs about 50 dense, scholarly pages. Scholarly, that's a little debatable. But if you visit Brazos de Dios, you aren't likely to land in a theological discussion unless you're looking for one. This is something I've brought up before, and it's interesting to see more confirmation of it from a site that seems to be, in a sense, backing up Homestead. They're talking about them very nicely, treating as though what they're doing is a really good thing. But right here, it comes out and shows evangelism is definitely not their concern. It's like you have, according to this, you practically have to push to get them to talk about it. Interesting. Going on. Parishioners seldom bring up the topic of theology. Not surprising. Although if you raise it, you'll find they have a deep awareness of the roots of their faith and its specific history. It's not what I've found. Their most tangible testimonies, visible everywhere in their community, are natural beauty, exquisite arts and crafts, delicious natural food, and loving kindness. Most tangible testimonies. Natural beauty, exquisite arts, crafts, delicious natural food, loving kindness, and nothing about Christianity, the gospel, any of what a ministry is supposed to be. Ironic. Now this is what got me. This is when I knew I had to share this. We work with Homestead Heritage through the Mother Earth News fairs. Homestead, from the beginning, everything I've seen, seems to push this idea they're all about being separate from the world. Separated from everything that is of this world. And the first place I come across that says they have a connection with Homestead is called Mother Earth News. Very ironic to see that. Continue on, where they promote the Plowshare Institute of Sustainable Culture. Their school where you can study traditional crafts such as beekeeping, organic gardening, blacksmithing, woodworking, and soap making. They teach their students how to make cheese, build harnesses, and create their own dishes and furniture. This is them backing up Homestead simply because everything they really do, everything that's their focus, everything that they're really pushing and promoting goes along with what this website's about. This is certainly not a Christian site. That in and of itself is kind of eye-opening. As Homestead's members tell it, now this is interesting, the teachings of Jesus led them to search for ways of living more meaningfully and compassionately, which in turn took them on a quest for lives that were more self-reliant and less dependent on the exploitative institutions that govern modern society. Along the way, they picked up the skills of self-sufficiency, and now they teach those skills to others. Interesting. Self-sufficiency. There's one place that has a connection with Homestead, saying that they're all about self-sufficiency, and yet when you read their teachings and stuff, it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't have anything to do with it. Self-sufficiency they practically look down on. But it's that the community is, because the community is God. Ironic, isn't it? Members also share the fruits of Homestead Heritage lifestyle directly with visitors. Their lifestyle is shared directly with visitors, and yet their beliefs aren't shared with visitors. So their beliefs have nothing to do with their lifestyle? Okay. The center of Brazos de Dios is a collection of shops around a cafe where they serve food the community raises, grass-fed beef and sausage, homemade pies and ice cream, and fresh bread made from homegrown flour ground on, I don't know what that is too much, but grist mill, I guess, just across the square. The nearby gift barn, a reassembled 200-year-old colonial barn from New Jersey. They sell exquisite art, furniture, hand-woven clothes, musical instruments, books, and dozens of other beautiful items the community's residents create. So they're making all these things, they're spending all this time on crafts to sell them for what reason? Apparently not to spread the gospel, not to spread the good news. So what? It's a world-class gift shop built on the barn's original wood threshing floor, smoothed by 2 centuries of scuffling hooves and wheels. Now, I don't want to say too much, but from everything I've heard, people I've talked to, one thing I find ironic about this is what they say above about everything being grown by them. That's not entirely true. However, maybe that's because of when this was written, because this was 2013, not too far back, but maybe things were a little different. I don't know. Have to talk to people that might know a little bit more about that, but from what I've heard more recently, not entirely true. Many of the community structures are reconstructed old buildings that were transferred piece by piece from the original American colonies. I have never heard this before. It makes me very curious how they got this. Now, there are other things I've heard, some of which are more confirmable than others, and that is potential political connections. I know they've done things for the Bush family, things like that. And it really, the more I see things like this, the harder it is to believe they really are about separating from the world. Not to mention a more recent rumor that given the sources, I feel a little more likely. They're making a new business, and more than one of which is potentially more of a financial business, which really is curious, but we'll see what happens with that. I'll try to give more info if I find it, but right now it's very much something I guess they're talking about doing. However, the other is a new place they're making for selling pizza, and actually they have a website up already. I should have brought the address. Maybe I'll put it on the description after this video, but I don't have it on me right now. So it's interesting, they're still doing more and more and more of that stuff. Where was I? Okay, Homestead Heritage parishioner Kevin Durkin fell in love with an abandoned barn up the hill from his childhood home in Catskill Mountains 50 years ago. So when he needed a barn for his own Brazos de Dios homestead a couple of decades ago, he went looking for a traditional timber framed structure he could disassemble and move. This in and of itself may not be huge, but it's like one thing after another where it's making it harder and harder for me to really believe they are trying to do things without any reliance on the rest of culture. That they are really trying to separate themselves from the world. It just keeps getting more and more difficult as I read this, and I see one thing after another that they're getting from different communities in different parts of the world, of society around them. The hypocrisy just keeps growing and growing and growing the more I look into this. He had so much fun with the project that he started marketing the service to others, and he's now moved more than 200 barns all over the country. Many of them to find new life as beautiful homes. One was even disassembled and shipped from upstate New York to become a community center in Tokyo. So, as you can see, this whole article is nothing but trying to sort of praise them, make them look fantastic from their perspective of being this place that's all about reliance on nature. And ironically enough, whether knowingly or not, they are basically praising them because their focus is not on Christianity, not on the gospel. It's on this environmental new age kind of thinking. I wouldn't exactly call praise from this site to a ministry a compliment. Now, reading this, it's just very ironic to me because one thing that is mentioned at the beginning and the end of this article is how the one who wrote it talks about the Amish and sort of admiring them, which is kind of funny because I've had multiple people who come against me talk down about the Amish. So clearly, this person doesn't care a thing about your beliefs. They care about you supporting Mother Nature. I don't know about you guys, but that makes all those hints I saw of New Age throughout Blair Adams' books much more confirmed and much more substantial and significant. Kind of wish I had seen this earlier. It really could have given me some interesting perspectives when I was going through the books the first time, but might have to go back, look at those again, see if maybe there's something I missed. But just thought I'd share it now, let you guys see that. Other thing I was thinking I'd do today is try to go through the questions document a little more closely, just because never really got into it too far. We just sort of went through a few little parts of it here and there. And right now I just want to kind of make this stream a little bit longer, primarily just to test. Not so much. 1 second. Okay. Not so much to test streaming itself, but because, like I said, I am trying to fix the lighting in here. You'll notice the image of me is much different. Not the most stable. That's because right now the room is very dark. I've just gotten a better camera. can take in the light a lot better, and I've changed the settings quite a bit to where even though there's not enough light that most cameras would pick this up well enough, I've been able to get it to work enough. So with what little light I have added, I want to make sure this is something I can do for long periods of time without any trouble. So that's the main reason I'm doing this today. Okay. So let's see where we're going to go with this. I don't expect to go through all of it for sure. Just want to go and make this stream at least an hour because that's usually what I've done or tried to do in the past. And if that goes well enough, probably we'll try to do this more. So here we go. This is very funny to me. I just love this first question simply because I've seen and I know this isn't entirely what happens. It says, I see that you use horses to work the land. Not always. But that's what people are going to ask when they're there visiting because that's what they're going to show. Now, what a long answer. And that's from Blair Adams, which is so funny to me that you give that long of an answer to answer a question like that when you've got these books discussing theology, discussing the gospel. They're about 60 pages. Hardly anything compared to most theological books. Again, odd priorities. So let's look at this. Would it offend if we ask, more efficient and productive for who or what? For people, for families, for society, for nature, for relationships with God, people and land, for the health of people, animal, or soil? Or rather, is it merely more productive for that vague but ubiquitous and impersonal abstraction, the economy? Hold on. More efficient and productive for who or what? For relationships with God, people, and land. Relationship with the land. So often I've seen that come up in their writings and what they talk about, and I'm really curious, are they ever going to explain what that means? Because that's one thing I haven't seen yet. They keep talking about it. I keep hearing it mentioned in passing, this idea of relationship with land, the importance of the land. But they never really explain what that kind of relationship is. What does that mean? Is such an abstraction more important than what you can hug and share your life with? Right there, you're all of a sudden treating the person who asked this question as though they're asking it for dogmatic reasons. Dogmatic as you are about this stuff. You talk as though you're doing these things on this land this way without machinery because of your religion and your beliefs. And when they ask you, while you wouldn't use those things when they're more productive, you go and you ask this question as though they're dogmatic. Always the frustration is you can hardly ever go a paragraph of anything by them or about them without hypocrisy showing up. In contrasting the interests of these two opposing beneficiaries of certain lifestyles, it has been shown that a family living self-sufficiently together on a small farm can better boost the economy through a divorce. Are they promoting divorce here? Or are they coming against the idea of having a family? Rather than supply their own needs, it is said that they will now pour money into the economy by going in debt to purchase not only the goods to meet their needs, but also the luxuries and diversions that must be sought in order to fill the new void in their lives. Who are you talking about? Are you talking about the people that do what you were just saying they do? Doesn't sound like it to me. And oh my goodness, are you rebuking them for selling what they're growing? Because that's what you do. What in the world? In addition, they will do all this now, separated from one another. So both wife and husband will now have separate jobs, and therefore a greater purchasing power, as well as greater debt. Okay, so now you're saying they have different jobs. So you're not talking about this job. You're talking about something else. What is this about? This was supposed to be about how you farm. Now you're going and talking about other things than farming? You are going so off track, completely away from this real question, and you're doing it in a way to try to make it look wrong and evil to do it differently than you. But the problem is, you're going by the assumption that these people have the similar worldview to you. Because if they don't, none of this really has any point to them. Now we not just have hypocrisy, we have so much just self-absorption. It's like you are everything. Your view is everyone's view. Your perspective is everyone's perspective. It's so weird. The grandparents will go into a nursing home and thereby boost the economy by creating jobs to care for and professionally love the elderly and infirm. That is not why people do that. That is not. Oh. That is so weird. Seriously, until you go and completely separate what you're doing from this world, from everything about it, you stop having these restaurants and these businesses and these fairs. You can't say this. That's absolute hypocrisy. So stop it. The children, if young enough, will be put in daycare and to also make more jobs for many more people of old enough. If old enough, the children will work and thereby have greater spending power, which will also boost the economy. Keep talking like the economy is evil. They keep having to capitalize economy as though it's a god. Please separate yourself from the economy first. Because of the trauma of divorce, monetary output for drug, medical, psychological costs will increase. More money will also be spent on alcohol, eating out, and other diversionary entertainments. So the economy will get a real boost from this divorce. Now we're back to divorce. Okay, what is this? Make up your mind. So this divorce is completely evil. So it's the fact that you use machinery to farm instead of just horses and things like that, you're causing divorce. I'm just going to go on to the next part. Moreover, to work with horses is to us simply more exciting and fulfilling. Why didn't you start here? This is where you're finally getting to what was actually asked. The horse farmer doesn't merely hold in his hands a synthetic steering wheel, which in turn controls other inert mechanical parts. Was that supposed to sound bad? Rather, he holds supple leather reins, leading it to living, conscious beings who respond to the call of their names and who participate along with the man in the work. Learning to anticipate their master's command to turn at the end of the furrow, to carefully plod between the rows in cultivation, to pull harder when the plow is harder soil, and after that, unlike the economy or tractor, will appreciate a pat on the neck or currying down a little water and a bait of feed. What's your point? You know what most people who hear this would say to that? They'd ask you, so it's better to have a slave? I'm not saying that's what that is, but this is definitely not a good way to answer questions of those who are outside of Homestead. This is definitely not going to explain it very well. So we may not derive as much cash from horse farming, but we know far greater fulfillment in relationships with the land, its creatures, our work, and the creator of us all. With the land, its creatures, our work. So you have a relationship with the land and you have a relationship with your work. If you can have a relationship with those, why can't you have a relationship with the tractor? You ever ask yourself that kind of question? You see, we do not believe a farm like primarily to grow cash, but to grow corn and boys and girls and horses and cows and sheep and love. I can't help myself. Okay, this is not serious. I think this is just kind of miswording, but I can't help just getting so can't help getting. It's so funny to think. So you're going to be putting people that you're breeding in a barn. They're having their sons and daughters in there. I just can't help picturing that. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Horses also keep our agriculture within the reach of a relationship with the earth that allows for personal responsibility and husbanding based on craftsmanship and art rather than merely large scale agribusiness dependent on mechanization. How many times can you repeat yourself and try to make it sound so intelligent? We are motivated and sustained by a desire to gain self sufficiency, assuming responsibility for our lives. If you think using a tractor is not self sufficient, why would you think using a horse is? Their definitions are really messed up. Horses multiply and often repair themselves. Can I ask you what you do when a horse breaks its leg? Then can I ask you what you do when a tractor is broken? I see a lot more work put into the tractor. The fuel grows in our own fields, not in overseas deserts controlled by the whims of OPEC. Okay. Now you're getting to something that I can, to an extent, understand. Why'd you just start with this? Because this right here, this is something that, yeah, I can see this actually making a point to a lot of people. But everything else, you've been treating it like they're part of your religion. This is something that they might actually listen to. Kind of late in bringing this up. I mean, we've only got half of a paragraph left, and you've already gone through like 2.5 paragraphs of nothing. At the same time, come spring, you never see baby tractors lying out in those fields or romping behind their mothers. What does that have to do with this? I mean, they're starting to sound like Amber Heard going and talking about Edward Scissorhands. So, horse farming represents the song and rhythms of life rather than the cacophony of roaring engines and the stench of petroleum in the pursuit of impersonal profits and production, all of which have come to be associated with environmental pollution, depleted resources, and even social disintegration. Yeah, this is crazy, isn't it? I can't help laughing at some of this. It's so funny. I just, they keep going from one angle to another with no, what's the word? Skips my mind. Just logical processing. You don't see that in here at all. It just keeps jumping around. It's so weird. Horse farming, in short, is to us part of a beautiful dance and song. Few people have been participating in the music for a long time, and we feel blessed to be dancing and singing among them. We sometimes even hear the trees of the fields clapping their hands. Okay, now we're back to this whole thing of this relationship with the land. How far do they go with this? I really want to know. There it is again, bringing a close relationship with the land. Same thing. Harmony with our environment. New age, new age, new age, new age. Yes, we use horses to work the land. Several years ago, we felt God leading us in that direction. Now, several years later, we can see that it was part of God's purpose to show us patterns of life and methods of working the land that would lead us as a people into deeper relationships with Him, with others, and into greater harmony with His creation. Harmony with His creation. I'm not sure if highly mechanized farming is really more profitable in the long run or not. So basically, you're admitting you don't really know much about this. But even if it is more efficient, the relational benefits that come from horse farming overshadow the issue of profitability and productivity. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you telling me that you think if somebody uses a tractor, they're going to lose their soul? Me? What does that scripture have to do with this topic? Okay, this is interesting. Considering the state of American agriculture, with families losing their farms daily and less than 2% of our total population living on farms, we question which is more efficient and productive in terms of human element. Wow. Somebody who has an interesting way of trying to make it more reasonable. Who knew? I still think it's a messed up way of thinking, but hey, at least it's a way of thinking. Modern machinery may be able to produce higher yields in less time, but in the long run, what does it do for the soil or the people who made their lives farming that soil? We see farming with horses as a way to sustain ourselves and the lifestyle we wish to live. There we go. What a simple statement that fits. We just like to do it this way. Just give that kind of answer. That's all people are looking for. You don't need to go preaching a sermon. One of the first times I've seen reasonableness. Depends on what you mean by efficient and productive. Once again, I'm trying to twist the meanings of words. If you mean we could produce more crops with less effort, cost, and time, then yes. What else would it be? But if you define efficient and productive as a skillful, loving nurturing of God's gift of land to us to bring forth year after year healthy crops, land, and people, then horses prove to be the best way to go. What does that have to do with efficiency and productive? Don't go twisting the language, okay? You've done enough of that in your theology. Just say, we don't care about the efficientness or the productivity as much as this. If you're speaking in a strictly material or monetary sense, yes, it might be in the short run more efficient and productive to use modern machinery. Once again, wanting to twist the words, especially if we had to wholesale our products on the mass commodities market, which is what you do. Soon as you're going and you're starting your own restaurants, You're selling your stuff in these fairs. What do you think you're doing? I've often thought how one or two men with modern farm machinery could probably manage these 350 stores quite well. But we're not striving to create an agribusiness where we farm for money and then go to the store and buy what we want. I can tell you right now, their idea that they don't go to the store and buy what they want is completely false. That is a lie. Farming is but one aspect of our community life where we are pressing towards a life completely sustainable by our own resources, a life that is fulfilling. So for us, horse farming is an efficient and productive method of farming. Horses feed off the land. A tractor does not. Horses get old, as do tractors, but horses give birth to new horses and tractors do not. Horse farming is definitely slower, yet it's also a much more peaceful way that removes us from the roar of tractors. Okay, so horses get old, as do tractors, but horses give birth to new horses and tractors do not. So are you saying it's a good way to save money? So you do care about economic things. Horse farming is definitely slower, yet it's also a much more peaceful way that removes us from the roar of tractors. That just... So you just want less noise. I have to say, that's... to me personally, that is very ironic simply because of the way your worship services sound. Now, most people at that point would probably say, no offense. Oh, there's an offense. It also affords us plenty of opportunities to work together as a community, with our families and our brothers and sisters. Opportunities that would be lost if we totally dependent on automated farm equipment. I thought you said you do this with horses instead of tractors. Are you saying you use some people like you use horses? Because if you have something that replaces the tractor, but it's not a person, how does that change anything about how many people do it? Whatever. Now this I find hilarious just because of the wording of the question, because I know people who visit are not asking like this. This is just so silly. Why do you live on the land and do things you do to husband the land? What's so bad about the city or suburbia? Oh my goodness. This whole thing with the relationship to the land, and now you're the husband of the land. I need to know more about this relationship. I really want to know the specifics of what you're talking about. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to go through this. Let's see. Once again, there just goes on forever about these questions that are just the simplest things. I mean, look at this. Other people are answering in one sentence, and he just goes for more than a page worth. A page and a half, for crying out loud. That is ridiculous. Oh, wow. Okay. When individuals live the way most other people live, which in our age increasingly means living in the city or suburbs and working in a service job or factory or office, people seldom ever question why they do the things they do. Oh no, they do. Trust me, I can tell you, they do. People question it all the time. That is not true at all. Yes, for us, it seems just as relevant to ask why someone would live in the city or work in an office as to ask why we live in the country and work the land. Well, then you probably ought to ask yourself the question more often because people here ask it all the time. After all, we could ask, what's so bad about the country? Moreover, 96% of all Americans once lived on farms. You know what I see is wrong with this? This question. I do not see people asking this much. At least not in the way they are asking it. What's so bad about the city or suburbia? Oh no. I think plenty of people would understand. I think what most people would be asking when they ask this kind of thing would be more of, why did you choose to do this? Not what kind of problems is there with it? Why would you ever care about it? No. They're just wanting to know your story, probably. They want to know why you personally did. Not because they find it is so mysterious and unfathomable why anybody would leave that. No, most people just want to know. So stop looking down on them in these answers. The fact is, most people go through their lives without thinking of why they make the major choices that shape their lives. No, they don't. They ask this constantly. Yet it's startling, or at least should be, to get to the end of life and realize you don't know why you chose the path you did, and therefore don't know why you lived the life you did. People ask this more times than just the end of their life. I've seen it. I've heard it. I know people have done it. This doesn't just happen at the end of your life. This happens many times. So if our way of life accomplished nothing else, it would be valuable for helping people to question why they live as they do. So, basically, your whole point of this is the example of showing people they shouldn't be in cities or suburbs. That's why you do this. That's the whole point. Is a sort of evangelism, but not for the gospel, instead for this kind of culture. Kind of fits in with what we read on that website, isn't it? In our day, most people simply fall into a job in an office, factory, or service business and settle into a house or apartment in the city or suburbs without really knowing why. Some do, some don't. But almost everybody asks, to some extent. They're carried along by circumstances. Wow, that kind of goes against everything you just said. And so the major choices that shape their lives are simply made for them. Again, going against everything you just said. You just treated them as though they're being foolish in what they're doing. And you just said choices made for them. Wow. The very fact that we freely, deliberately chosen our lifestyle makes it unusual in this day. Fair. Fair enough. But you realize that doesn't mean you made the right choice. It just means you made a choice. Many of us grew up in cities, and we found a peace and harmony here on the land that we never knew in city life. I could go on and on for hours about the problems that this shows in theology and how it goes against some of what they teach. But let me just say right now, if you're living completely in peace and harmony, you are going against your own teachings. You feel something that you can't fully put into words when you see your children learning to flow with the rhythms of the seasons, sowing, planting, and reaping. Your life takes on the nature of a song. Going down that road again. You see a sense of responsibility grow in the children's character as they learn to care for their animals, their crops and fruit trees, to work together productively with their friends under the guiding hand of responsible men and women. Do you realize that right there can happen in plenty of other places, plenty of other types of work? That whole idea of working together like that does not have to be done in this kind of work. It can be done in many ways. There are other lessons that country life teaches too, such leading secular... Man, with the way that's shaded, it's kind of weird, but luminaries as Corliss Lamont, honorary president of the Hawaiian Humanist Association. Whoa. Another one of those things I've brought up many times. They're very humanistic. And now he says this. There's the confirmation I've been looking for. Understand that the stronghold of supernatural religion has always been in the country rather than the city. You are going to trust somebody who leads that to teach you theology. Wow. And that idea? I don't think so. You might want to go ahead and read a lot of the New Testament. That's precisely why Lamont praised the spread of urban culture. Now, this is interesting. Karl Marx, too, lamented what he called the idiocies of rural life and saw the spread of cities and industrialism as essentially to further his anti-theistic views. Why are you going to trust his words? Since we hold the views opposite the position of such men, it seems natural for us to live where even these opponents of Christ admit our views most flourish. You're going to trust their words. That statement in and of itself is its own hypocrisy. So messed up. This just goes on and on and on and on, and that's all he does. It's been about an hour. Looks like I'm the only one on at the moment, so for those of you who may be watching this after the fact, hope there's some interesting stuff this shows. I do want to try to do this a little bit more. I may be doing this from now on instead of my videos. I won't be doing as often as I did the videos, but I will try to do this occasionally. maybe we'll use this to go through all of, excuse me, to go through all of this questions document. But mostly I want to do it just looking at other factors, articles, things like that, that I wasn't able to go through on the channel and with other videos I did because I was so focused on their theology. Streaming, I'd like to get into some of the other things. But I'll see you guys then. God bless.